In this lesson, we're going to begin the process of starting to light up our final mech scene. Okay, so we're going to jump back to the kind of mech project that we have been working on throughout the first portions of this course. So now what we're going to get to do is come in and really start to bring this final scene to life with some lighting and some really simple techniques that are really going to take this a long ways. So let's come in and let's start by just taking a basic quick render. So let's come in here and see what we have. Okay, so you can give this just a moment to finish up. Now right now we're going to be rendering this with Maya software. Now as I mentioned in one of the earlier lessons, Maya software is going to be good for really simple, really basic stuff, but when you're starting to get into realism, you'll really want to switch to using Mental Ray. So let's go ahead. I'm going to switch this over to Mental Ray. Let's save this image for comparison. Let's do a quick render. Okay, now as you can start to see, compared to what we had before and what we have now, between the Maya software render and Mental Ray is quite a bit different. So Mental Ray is able to take things like these pieces of geometry for the legs and start to give these automatic smoothing. We also have within Mental Ray a lot of additional controls for lighting and indirect illumination that we just simply do not have inside the Maya software render. Now one of the things that you'll notice, and I'll point this out right away, is the fact that if you look in some of these areas like the shoulder blades, the arms, and the legs, you'll notice that our texture has essentially disappeared. And you'll start to get sort of the same effects down here around this area of kind of the opening, whereas before we had kind of a nice texture. Now we no longer have that. And really that's a side effect of using Mental Ray with the substance textures that Justin showed you how to set up in the earlier texturing portion of this course. Now that's not a problem. We'll work around that in one of our later lessons. We'll come back around and sort of fix that up. But for now, let's just not pay any attention to the fact that our textures are missing. It won't really dampen or hamper us from being able to work around this and work through the initial lighting portion. So the first step that we're going to take in sort of bringing this whole scene to life is start to introduce a concept called image-based lighting. Now, image-based lighting is one of the things that we have in Mental Ray that we don't have access to in the Maya software render. So to set up image-based lighting, what we're going to do is go into the render settings, which is this little clapboard icon with the two little dots next to it. You can get to this through either the render view window, or we have that same exact little clapboard with the two dots right up here in your top toolbar. So either one will take you to the exact same render settings window. Now inside Mental Ray, we're going to go over to the indirect lighting tab, and up at the very top, we're going to start by creating an image-based light source. So let's create this, hit create, and let's just sort of close out some of these windows. And for now, we can just kind of close out this render settings window. Now it doesn't really look like anything has happened, but if you look closely, we now have this Mental Ray IBL shape, and IBL stands for image-based lighting. Now this is really sort of like the name suggests. With image-based lighting, we're actually going to plug in a texture, an image, and then Mental Ray is going to try to derive the color and luminance or intensity information from that image to try to generate light for our scene. Now, if for whatever reason you lose your Mental Ray IBL shape, you can usually get to this through the outliner. If you come in and grab your Mental Ray IBL, there it is right there. Okay, now it may not necessarily be visible in the viewport, and if that ever happens, just maybe grab your IBL here. Let's go back to our channel editor, and let's come in and maybe take this scale and maybe bring this down a little bit, maybe something like 3000. There we go, and that should now bring it a little bit more into view. Sometimes we'll drop these in to where it's really large, and the IBL actually falls outside the visible area of your camera. It won't affect the way that it renders. Everything will still render just fine. It's just that it sometimes isn't visible in the viewport is all. So with our IBL selected, let's come in here and press Control A on our keyboard, and let's plug in an image. So let's come in and let's browse to the source images directory of our current project. And if you take a look in here, you should see this IBL environment. We're going to plug that in, and that is what's going to act as our environment for this IBL light. Now, if I take a look at that IBL environment image in some sort of an image editor, it's going to look like this. So this is a spherical panoramic image, a 360-degree spherical panorama. You can find a lot of these online, or you can make your own with proper camera and proper lenses. And we do have courses on our site that will talk a little bit more about how to go through this process if you're interested in actually accomplishing this on your own. But for now, this just sort of gives you an idea of the type of image that we want to plug into this IBL. You want to make sure that it's a spherical panoramic environment. Okay, so let's take this IBL and let's just select this. I'll go back to my channel editor, and what we can do is maybe take our rotate and let's just rotate this around a little bit more. Let's make sure that we are actually looking through our shot cam so we can get this angled up right. Now what I'm sort of looking at is this sunlight that's back here. Now rather than have the sun sort of behind our character, what I'd like to do is basically rotate this environment to where the sun's a little bit more in front. So I'm going to select my IBL environment, select this rotate Y, and then with this selected, I'll just come in here to this open space, middle click, and drag from side to side. And now that gives me a really easy way to come in and kind of rotate this environment around. So let's come in and sort of place it maybe roughly in this general vicinity, maybe around -160. Let's just take a quick render and see what that does for us. Okay, very nice. So now we can see this nice little environment that is showing up in the background, and we also have the reflections of this that is coming through in our materials as well. So already a big change from what we had before. Now the thing to keep in mind is right now that this is not actually emitting any sort of light. Right now it's really only just showing up in the reflections. So to fix that, we can come in with our indirect lighting tab. Now that we have our image-based lighting plugged in, the way that we can start to make this actually generate some indirect illumination for us is to turn on this final gathering checkbox. Now, final gathering is basically just a calculation method that will allow the system to start to sample areas of color and brightness from this environment and any environment surrounding object and start to derive luminance or lighting information from that. So we're going to simply turn on our final gathering checkbox. I'm going to save that image for comparison. Let's do another render. Now, as we start to introduce final gathering, it's probably going to start to slow down our renders by a pretty fair amount. So be prepared for that. Let's be patient. Give this just a minute to finish up. There we go. So now you can see what we had before and what we have now. It's definitely quite a bit brighter as far as some of the actual luminance information that is now being cast and generated into the scene, and it's all being based on this image. Okay, so now that we have this set up, what we'll start to do in our next lesson is begin the process of kind of slowly refining and tuning our lighting results. So we'll continue this process in our next lesson.